Now, old Joe isn't going to go just automatically give a stranger work. So he invited him inside. He fixed him a bowl of soup from the soup that he had had for dinner. And he got a feel for the guy. And after a while, he thought, you know what? I've work for you. Come over to this window. I'll show you. And he said, see that farmhouse over there? That's a selfish trader that lives there. We once were friends. And he crossed me. I want you to build a fence so high that I don't even have to see that man's barn. I want you to, now tomorrow morning I'll show you where the wood is, it's in the barn, and when I have to go into the village for work, I want you to go ahead and start work, and I'll check your work in the evening. In the morning, he hitched up 2 horses to his wagon and he set out for the village. And the carpenter found the wood and started doing his work. It wasn't until twilight that old Joe crested the hill, and what he saw made him even madder than he had been in the first place. He was furious. And so he made the horses go even faster, and he was about to crawl off the seat of the wagon and give this guy what for, because what he had done, instead of building a fence, was that he had built a bridge. And his finger was out, and he was about to tell him just what he thought of him. And just at that moment, Peter, his neighbor, started walking across the bridge, and his arms were stretched wide, and he said, Joe, I would never have had the courage. I am so sorry. Will you ever forgive me? And Joe went, of course I will. And they both hugged. And the carpenter, he was asked if he could do some more work, but he says, I have work elsewhere. We, here in this room, we are the bridge builders. When I work with other organizations, sometimes people say, well, the ones who are the problem aren't in the room. The people with all the power aren't here. Where's the mayor? Where's etc.? And in every situation, the people who are the problem are not in the room. They never are. We are here because we are the bridge builders. And we have one agenda, and that agenda is to find a way to create reconciliation for Shreveport. For us, for our families, for our kids, and for our grandkids. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to start out by sharing some stories, and I'm going to ask Deborah, Lewis, and Mavis to come up front. So, wisdom is embedded in our personal experiences. If experience is the best teacher, story is second best. And rather than invite people to come and receive wisdom, what we're hoping to do is to connect all the wisdom that we have in this room together. Now, storytelling is easier if you have all the time in the world. We have 100 people in this room, and we want everybody to get a chance to tell a story. So we've designed a process that'll work. And I've asked these 3 people to come up and share a 3-minute story, yes, 3 minutes, so that we can get a feel for what that's like. The question is, what is reconciliation? What is it to you? You're not, Rosie, you're wrapping up the evening. Uh-huh. Not now. I'm sorry. All right. Rosie's going to wrap up the evening. Isn't that going to be cool? She's going to listen to everything we said, and then at the evening she's going to tell us what we need to remember. So the way this process works is after we hear these 3 stories, I'm going to give you a chance at your tables to tell stories just to a partner. And then we will create a space where the people with the red bars, those participants that have been selected, get a chance to share with the whole table. One story, short story. It doesn't have to be the best, most powerful story you've ever heard. It's just whatever comes into your head. We'll share those stories. And then after a while, you get a chance to just see where the conversation goes. Then we will ask each table to suggest one teller to come up during dessert, and we'll have a storytelling show. And we'll get a chance to share some of the best stories as a group, embedding the wisdom of one in many. First, I'd like to ask Louis Brosette. Oh, all right.
Good evening, and welcome to the Reconciliation Dinner. My name is Louis Brosette. I got married in 1974 to the wife I thought was going to be my wife for life. That didn't turn out that way, as you'll see in this story. I also have a daughter at that time, 4 months old, Corvette Michelle Brosette. I got a call from my job one day, and my neighbor downstairs said, "Mr. Brosette, please come home. Something is happening in your apartment." Now, I knew that the only people who were at my house was my wife and my daughter, and what could possibly be going on? She said that there was a lot of rumble, Mr. Brosette. So I came on home. And as I got to the house, there was a statue. I'm a man of a lot of statues. I love statues. And I had two big, beautiful statues at my house, and one of them was turned over. One of them was kind of cracked a little bit. And I asked my wife what had happened, and she said, "I don't know. Maybe Michelle did it. She's 4 months old, and I know she can't move them." But that, in this point, is going to be my, what's that word? My evidence of things going wrong with my marriage. As I went back to work, and I came back home that evening, my wife was gone, my daughter was gone. I didn't know what to expect, but I figured she might have been with her mother, so I called her mother's house, and she said she wasn't there. So I went on and taken my shower and laid across the bed. Here it comes 12:45 in the morning, and I say, "Wow, they haven't gotten here yet." So I closed that off, and I just say, well, she's got to be either at a friend's house or something there. So that she never came home. I was so much hurt, so much pain, but I took it. Now, I went back to work the next day, and my friend Shelley, we worked the shipping office at Piggly Wiggly Operators Warehouse at that time. Shelley saw I was not really doing really good, and I was tearing up, and I was kind of really not with it. So he came over and he said, "Louis, what's the matter?" I said, "Shelley," I say, "I believe my wife has left me." I say, "I don't know what's going on." I say, "But something is not just right." He grabbed me and he hugged me and he told me, he says, "Man, look, everybody goes through something." He said, "But hold on and put it in God's hand." And that's what I did. And I think that's why I'm here today, is because of Shelley with those words. And I appreciate him for that. Now, finding out, as I look into my wife's purse, and I see that there was some fraudulent activities with the welfare office. Someone was getting checks not at my house, but at her mother's house. So we stopped that. But just think how much trouble I could have been in had I not went to the people myself and told them what had happened. My wife had went to California, but I didn't know that until a long time before I can file missing person after the mother-in-law wouldn't tell me where she was. And again, there's still a lot of grief and pain. I still carry that pain right today. But I say to you today that this lady that had done so wrong, we are now the best of friends. Thank you very much.
Mavis, would you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mavis Hughes Thickpen, the daughter of the late and great Eddie Eugene Hughes. This July, our restaurant will have been open 40 years. But I'll tell you how it all started, and it's a short story. My father had a father and a stepmother, and she wasn't a very nice stepmother. Occasionally, my father and his sister, they would be outside playing, and if it got late, she would lock the door. And at that time, they were living on Milam Street, and the houses set up kind of high. She would lock them out of the house. They would knock. Granted, his father was in the house, but they wouldn't let him in. So my dad and his sister would bundle up under the house and sleep until the next day. Well, it happened quite a bit, and people sort of noticed that. And my dad's distant cousin kind of told another cousin, and my dad was 8 years old then. But Wilma Wallette and Mavis Collie Wallette, they raised my father from the time he was 8 years old. And they did a great job. And that's how my dad learned to cook. Down at the old Freeman and Harris, he started off as a dishwasher, mopping the floor, the kitchen, doing whatever. And he learned to cook, and he was really good at it. And at the age of about 14, he created what you're eating now, the stuffed shrimp. He didn't really get recognized for it until he was about 17 years old. And once he graduated from high school, he went into the Army and he perfected it. He brought it back to Freeman and Harris, and they sold it like crazy. But my mother still today, who is 83 years old, has my father's handwritten recipe for the stuffed shrimp. I think all of that made my father who he was. And his stepmother, she was very sick at the time. She asked for my father and his sister. She wanted to talk to him. My father's sister was in Houston. She didn't come, but my father did. And she apologized. She said she didn't know any better. She was young, and she just thought she was doing what she thought was right, trying to make them model kids. And she asked my father, would he forgive her? And my father said yes. And I think after that is when we blossomed. That's when we just kind of came alive on that corner. And today, we're still thriving. We've been recognized by the Southern Living magazine as the best soul food and seafood in the South. We have lots of accolades and, just everything to kind of tell who we are and what we're about. And if you ever want these stuffed shrimp, fresh, hot, come by Eddie's. We're on the corner of Hollywood and Union. Thank you.
And Deborah Allen.
Hello everyone, I'm Deborah Allen, and the story I'm about to tell you is very personal, and I've never told anyone. When I was 4 years old, I was living with my mother and going back and forth to visit my grandmother. My mother was very young and working at the telephone company downtown. So I'd spend the weekends with her, but go back and live with my grandmother during the week. Now my grandmother was a very strong-willed woman, and she had this big red Foudon hairdo, and red lipstick. One day she sat me down at the table, and she pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil. And she takes it, she draws this big circle. Then she draws 2 more circles in there, and she makes these eyes that cross. She makes this mouth with teeth nipples and these big ears. And she says, "This is Daddy Drew. We don't like Daddy Drew." Well, time goes on, I'm with my mother, we're going on the trolley downtown to shop. And my mom tells me, "I'm going to buy you a new dress because I'm getting married to Daddy Drew." I lost it going, "We don't like Daddy Drew, we don't like Daddy Drew." And that's what started my relationship with my stepfather. He went on to adopt me, but there were times around the table that it was very hard. He would tell me how I wasn't feminine enough or thin enough, or a man would never want to marry me. So I married pretty young to get out of that house. I had my children, and as I noticed with him, as I had children, he didn't seem like that mean guy that I had grew up with. I was pregnant with my 4th child, Ashley. I wake up after having her, and he's standing by my bedside, and he has these big tears in his eyes. And I realize, I look up at him, I go, "Do you like your birthday present?" Because it was his birthday. She was born on his birthday. He goes, "I love my birthday present." Years went by, and it was a year before he passed away, and we were all around his bedside at the hospital. He'd had a stroke, and everybody was leaving one by one. It was just me and my son Daniel in the room with him, and we talked for a little while and left, and as we're leaving, he goes, "Debbie, I love you." And that was the first time I'd ever heard those words from him. At that point, it took a little while, but I realized then I didn't need therapy anymore, and I didn't need to self-medicate or any of the things I'd done through my life. And the moral of the story is, today, I can't remember any of those bad things that happened to us. I only remember the times that he protected me and he showed me love, even though he never said so. Thank you.
How about that?